Economics, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know what else I can say. I don't know what else I can say. This is the first economics video, first economics explained video on the channel. You guys would have probably seen in the last video that I ended up clicking on this because it was in the recommended. But shouts out economics. I've been meaning to get more into it. Learning how, all we do on the channel is learn more about how shit works. Right? The Economist might have to go sub to that guy too real quick.
What do I want?
Shouts out the Economist.
Interest rates are...
The Economist. My God, did I just say the Economist? My fucking God. Jesus Christ. Okay. Welcome back to the channel. Hopefully you guys are having an amazing day today. I hope you guys are doing amazing. I hope you guys are having a fantastic day. Maybe you've reacted to a video of mine already. Maybe you haven't. Maybe you're brand new here. And if that's the case, how are you doing? I hope you're having an amazing day. And I hope that you're going to enjoy learning something new with me. Right? We're going to learn. Let's learn about the facts. Right? I'm hoping that they're going to come at us with facts. I hope this isn't some bullshit. This is about inflation and a recession, which I have noticed. I have been feeling that. I did notice a bit of recession tendencies when you look at the economy nowadays. But you also notice hyperinflation tendencies. I mean, look at the gas prices. Look at everything. Everything seems to be going up in price. I mean, shit's fucking expensive right now. And there aren't new jobs. Like, it's not like motherfuckers are getting raises. It's not like they're getting paid more. It's not like they're spending more necessarily. I mean, I'm still spending around the same, but it's fucking hard, man. It's a complicated system. Let's learn about it. Let's do it. Not much else to say. Economics explained. Let's go.
are on the rise. Interest rates are on the rise. The stock market has had its worst first 6 months in over half a century. Prices for everyday goods are remaining stubbornly high, and government support programs designed to help people through the pandemic.
Damn. Pandemic era relief is drying up, but families still have options.
Are getting cancelled faster than sitcoms from the 1980s. A lot of people are in a more precarious financial situation now than they were at the supposed height of the pandemic. Just American spending on economic stimulus efforts adjusted for inflation.
The U.S. has thrown more than $6 trillion at the coronavirus crisis. That number could grow.
Is the same as America spent fighting World War II. Government budgets are very different from household budgets. So, while a lot of the typical sound bites about debt and fiscal responsibility might be a bit overblown, it's also important to remember that governments aren't magic. They can't just create value out of thin air to brush away any problems.
This guy Australian, he's giving me an Aussie accent. I don't know, am I tripping when I say that? Because I don't think that's British, right? That might be British. I think that sounds Aussie to me. If I've ever heard an Australian, he's sounding a little bit Australian. I don't know. I might be stupid. I might be completely off the rails. I might be completely wrong. But I think he's an Australian. I fuck with the accent. Shuts out.
If they could, we would live in a post-scarcity utopia. But obviously, we don't. So, if governments don't manage their money like you or I, then how do they pay the bill for living above their means? The answer to this question can teach us a lot about what the next few months have in store for us. The standard thinking now is that we are stuck between unreasonably high inflation and a recession. Neither of these options are good, but they are bad in different ways, and they are bad for different people. So, how long will it take our economies to go back to normal? Who is really going to end up paying for the record spending done over the past 28 months? And are we stuck choosing between inflation and a recession, or is there another option? This episode of Economics Explained was brought to you by Public.com, the internet's premier platform for better investors. We all know we should have a diversified portfolio, but it's easier said than done. Holding multiples and spend lets you invest. Most important part in, you can call on Public's easy-to-use platform, and now you can too. That's because Public has a support team of real people, not robots. Join me on Public.com and receive up to $1,000 in free stock when you sign up using the link on screen now or in the video description below.
$3.
Do we have to choose between unreasonably high inflation and a recession? Well, no. But that's not the good news you might think it is. The US currently has an annualized inflation rate of 8.6%, which is 3 to 4 times the Fed's target rate, and is very securely in what we would call unreasonable territory. Growth itself has also been very weak, with a negative first quarter and most predictions forecasting another slow quarter of growth having just passed. The technical definition of a recession is 2 quarters of negative real GDP growth. Now, most institutions
So
these
what's a
days
quarter?
know...
A quarter of a year? So that's 6 months? No. Yeah, that's 6 months, because 2 quarters would make half a year, no? So half a year of negative growth in real GDP, that would count as a recession. As you can see here, this is 10 years across. So it's been stagnant, of course. It's not going to be just a straight line. But it seems like it's been decent up until the pandemic, wherein we were fucked. We were really bad in GDP growth. Went down below 20. We were like, what, negative 30 something percent around here? Negative 30%. And then we spiked back up to 30% somehow. What the fuck is this? What did we do here? What kind of shit was done here? Jesus Christ. And then we spiked back down, back to almost regular looking shit until right now, where it looks like we're gonna be going straight. It looks like we've been going straight down.
Slow quarter of growth having just passed. The technical definition of a recession is 2 quarters of negative real GDP growth. Now, most institutions these days no longer use that rigid framework for determining if we are or are not in a recession, but at least by the most solid definition that we have available, we are probably already there in most economies around the world. So yeah, there is another option besides picking high inflation or a recession. It's just not the option that you might have been hoping for, because it's C, all of the above. This is what economists call stagflation, and you'll probably start to hear this term thrown around more and more in the coming weeks and months.
Stagflation.
Stagflation was a term first used in the 70s to describe a period of low economic growth with high unemployment, which still manages to also have high inflation. Typically, low growth and high unemployment reduce inflation because if people don't have jobs and they are uncertain about the future, they won't spend as much money. If people don't spend as much money, there is less total demand in the economy, and if there is less demand, then prices fall. Lower prices are the exact opposite of inflation. We looked at this last month in our video on the recession that we need to have, so I don't want to repeat too much here.
Let me know if you're watching this right now.
Stagflation
Leave a
is
comment down below if you want me to react to that one as well, for whatever reason, you know. Like I said, these videos is never about like some crazy shocking reaction or anything. It's just about being able to say, you know, we're watching this with somebody, right? Not watching it alone. We're learning about economics together, right? That's sort of the dynamic I go for. Is with these videos, it's more about just watching it with somebody, right? And I hope I don't annoy you by pausing it so much, but I have to talk, you know, I have to give my opinions. I have to be able to express myself. Otherwise, it's not a reaction. Otherwise, I'd just be sitting here like these. Just quiet for 16 minutes, not saying a word. Because I know some people that react like that. I know some people that do that stuff. And it seems a little bit shoddy. It seems like you're not really somebody that deserves to be out there making a reaction video if you're not gonna, well, you know, do any kind of reacting. I know, like, there's not much in this video that's shocking. You know, that's the most reactable videos when something's shocking, something's funny, like a try not to laugh or something like that. There's not much of that in these videos, if you notice. So, you know, you gotta give your 2 cents, I guess. You know, you gotta speak your mind whenever possible, and that's when I pause it. You know, but sometimes I do feel I go a little bit overboard, and I should look at the camera a little bit more. It's like I'm looking into the eyes. Nobody likes the motherfucker that is not confident enough to keep eye contact, right? You want to make sure that you're looking directly at the eyes of the person that you're talking to, and that's something that I need to work towards. You know, and I'm trying to work towards that. Now let's go.
A sign that something has gone terribly wrong in the economy. It's like somehow dying of dehydration and drowning at the same time, and chances are it's something that we're going to have to deal with.
Okay.
The question is really becoming, how bad are both of these going to get? And to answer this question, let's start with inflation. Inflation is high right now for 2 reasons.
Why?
There has been a lot of money injected into the economy in the past 2 years, and there have been severe product shortages caused by supply issues stemming from pandemic lockdowns, trade tensions, and now a war in Eastern Europe. Both of these will increase the prices of goods, but it's difficult to say which is having a bigger impact at any given time. Up until recently, the Federal Reserve Bank was primarily pointing the finger at supply chain issues for price spikes in certain areas. Conveniently, this would relieve them of responsibility for inflation because they only have direct control over cash flows in the economy. The Fed doesn't involve itself in trade negotiations or lockdown policies. This stance has been walked back by the Fed, and their research now indicates that approximately 3% of the current inflation rate was caused by income transfers, which is just a technical way of saying all of the extra money that was pumped into the economy during the pandemic. Now, 3% is actually not that bad, and the Fed itself also quickly points out that had these measures not been taken, we would likely be experiencing deflation, which would have been worse for a variety of reasons. If the target rate of inflation is 2 to 3% and we are currently at 8.5%, then the 3% caused by stimulus efforts represents half of the problem. Of course, the actual calculations are far more complex than this, and the Fed themselves have admitted that this 3% figure is likely to be adjusted upwards, but for now it gives us a pretty good benchmark to work with. So then, what is causing the other 3% of above average inflation that we are currently experiencing? Supply chain issues are certainly part of it. There is no getting around the fact that the way that we do business and add value in our economies has fundamentally changed in the past 2.5 years. But why are we only really experiencing this now? Industrial output has actually recovered to all-time highs in the US, and imports have spiked to make up for the supply shortages and then some. A few months ago, supply chains were a major part of the inflationary problem, but now there's a little bit more to it. Of course, there are still certain items like consumer electronics.
So wait, that 3% of money, okay, so we're creating money, is that what it means? Like money's being created out of nowhere? Like, see, this is what's hard. You know, when it's the first economics video and you realize I haven't watched the economics crash course. Okay, I have not taken the college course for economics. I might. I don't know, it depends. I'm interested because I'm interested. That's it. Like, I think I need to know this because it'd be smart to know. It's smart to know how money works. I think it's probably the most important thing to know. Honest to God. Honest to God. Oh, you can't self-actualize if you can't provide for your own money. It's in a book that I read, In Control. You know, you can't do a lot of what you could want to do. You can't transcend if you don't have your basic needs. And how do you get your basic needs with money? As much as I don't like it, as much as I wish it was different, as much as I wish we weren't so obsessed with that green paper. That's actually the dirtiest thing on the planet because of how many people have touched it with dirty hands. It's not even just that. I mean, it's also digital numbers now. You know, Bitcoin is whatever price somebody's willing to pay. It's not even real. It's not. It's like, it's complicated. It's a very complicated world out here, and I'm beginning to realize this. You know, I mean, I'm 18, and I wasn't ever necessarily taught about this. You know, I wasn't necessarily told about the complexity of this. And it's like, but I want to learn. I want to study, and I want to master it. That's possible. How can I know how all of this works so that then maybe if I was like, let's say a business owner, how can I protect my assets? How can I protect my shit? How can I protect my shit from falling down? How can I take a less of a hit? Because there's people that are hit really hard by recessions. When an economy I mean, it's all connected to you. You know, you realize as an individual, you know, you think that maybe this isn't a part of you, that this is not important because it's not a part of your individuality or whatever, but you do exist in a duality. You have to accept it. Like, there is that bit of you that is an individual, but there is that bit of you that also is a part of a nation, that is also a countryman, you know, that is a citizen, that is somebody that lives within this economic system. And it's so overbearingly fundamental to what you do. I think that you should know about it, right? And not just be completely blindsided by it when it comes and possibly fucks you. You know, when shit like this happens. So that's why I really want to know. I really want to learn. I want to learn how the world works, how it functions.
Foodstuffs and, of course, oil that remain
semiconductor industry is
and
dealing
a lot of
with
these have had knock-on effects. Almost everything that remain problematic, and a lot of these have had knock-on effects. Almost everything that we consume these days is transported hundreds, if not thousands of kilometres around the world before it gets to us. If oil is expensive, then this transport costs more money, a cost which will sooner or later be passed along to us as consumers. If we follow this line of thinking, we can start to find the real source of this additional 3%. Paul Donovan, the chief economist at UBS Global Wealth Management, astutely pointed out in a recent interview that only about 15 to 20% of what we spend on food is actually going to the food. The other 80% is being spent on the process of getting that food from the farm to our supermarkets. This is roughly made up of transport expenses, like the fuel that we were talking about earlier, and stuff like packaging and processing. which with COVID restrictions has become slightly less efficient.
So that's half.
There is still two other big expenses that we need to account for when we buy our food though, and that is the profit margins of all of the companies involved in the supply chains and the salaries of all of the workers that made it possible. All of this talk of inflation has been a golden opportunity for companies to raise their prices under the guise of simply keeping up with inflation. In reality, most companies have raised their prices too far, either out of fear of inflation persisting or, more realistically, because they can. If people are expecting a rise in the price level of their goods and services, they are not going to be surprised when there is a rise in the price level of their goods and services. The last 6 months have seen record corporate profits, despite a lot of fiscal stimulus measures being slowly tapered off, because these companies can now get away with charging whatever they really want to. 6 months have seen record corporate profits, despite a lot of fiscal stimulus measures being slowly tapered off, because these companies can now get away with charging whatever they really want to. Now, the biggest
So you're talking about I seen that gasoline. I think he's saying something. I think he's subliminally telling you. Them motherfuckers don't need to charge that high for gasoline. They probably don't. Well, I mean, I guess it would make sense if a lot of that shit's being blocked off. It's not functioning well. Maybe it was destroyed. Because I mean, hey, we do get a bit of oil from Russia, don't we? You know, but it's like, some motherfucker out there probably knows it probably still shouldn't be that high. You know, and they're just getting away with it because they can.
Of this energy expense pie
Fuck
is
all
almost
of you
always
gasoline tycoon motherfuckers. Ugh. That thought that everything I do just makes somebody richer. Oh my god. It kind of makes me boil a little bit.
going to be labour costs, and those two are on the rise.
Make somebody richer, that's not
Unemployment
me.
is very low at the moment, and less people are choosing to work at all. This means workers have more negotiating power, and less people are choosing.
Labor force participation. So what, people that are willing to work, or people that are willing to, like, go do unpaid work? What do you mean participation? Participating in what exactly? In looking for work and working? So what, these motherfuckers just aren't working? Labor force participation. So this is the whole. Okay, I think I'm understanding.
Choosing to work at all. This means workers have more negotiating power to demand higher wages, and with all of the talk of inflation, the motivation to do it as well. Going wages, and with all of the talk of inflation, the motivation to do it as well.
Okay, so they're talking
going
about
into your
at
boss's
least paying
office and
people
telling
more?
them that you want to raise because in this labour market you're going to be very hard to replace probably won't go over very well. Telling them that you want to raise to keep up with inflation is much more reasonable. If everyone does this, it's very easy to see how we end up with higher prices on the goods that we end up buying off the shelf. So, can we fix this? Well, yes actually. Higher interest rates will put a damper on business and consumer activity, which will make those businesses and workers less confident asking for record profits and salary increases. Actually, one of the most powerful tools the government has to fight this type of inflation is their rhetoric. By saying very loudly and very firmly that inflation has now become their number one priority, we will start to expect that this issue won't last long, and in doing so, we'll be less motivated to take actions that lead to inflation in the first place. Of course, they still need to be very careful about this because the Fed may very well still have to reverse course very quickly if the economy falls into a recession. Doing the opposite of what they promised will mean that people won't listen to them anymore, which could strip them of this very underappreciated tool. We are actually seeing this at the moment here in Australia. The chairman of our Reserve Bank at the height of the pandemic said that they would not raise interest rates until 2024. He said this to try and calm consumers during a time when a recession was the biggest fear on people's minds. But now, after 3 record ratings...
Damn, bro, I'm beginning to understand that I need to read more, man. I need to understand this. I don't even exactly know what an interest rate is. What the fuck is an interest rate?
4. He said this to try and calm consumers during a time when a recession was the biggest fear on people's minds. But now, after 3 record
I
ratings
kind of have an idea, but
increases, people aren't going to take what he says very seriously anymore. Alright then.
He did raise it?
What about the recession?
Wait, Australia
Don't
raised
listen
it?
to them anymore, which could strip them of this very underappreciated tool. We are actually seeing this at the moment here in Australia. The chairman of our Reserve Bank at the height of the pandemic said that they would not raise interest rates until 2024.
But they did.
He said this to try and calm consumers during a time when a recession was the biggest fear on people's minds. But now, after 3 record rate increases, people aren't going to take what he says very seriously anymore. Alright then, what about the
Damn.
recession? Inflation may very well be like Tinkerbell in that it only exists if people really believe it exists, but that doesn't mean it's not a problem. Most of the things that the government and reserve banks around the world do to fix inflation is exactly the opposite of what they do to fix a recession. If an economy has inflation that is too high, the central bank raises interest rates and the government taxes more while spending less. If an economy is going into recession, the central bank lowers interest rates and the government taxes less while spending more. So, what's the correct course of action when inflation is less? When an economy is going into recession, the central bank lowers interest rates and the government taxes less while spending more. So, what's the correct course of action when inflation is high and the economy
That
is
can't be
still
American dollars, right? That's gotta be something else. There's no way. $12.70 for diesel? God damn. Woo! Motherfuckers is dying out here, bro. If you have diesel, bro, you're suffering. You're suffering, man. You're on your knees.
Towards a recession? The answer is really some kind of compromise. The Federal Reserve Bank's core mandate is price stability, and while they normally try to balance this with enabling economic growth, if they are backed into a corner, they will choose to maintain price levels even if it comes at the expense of pushing the economy into a recession. It sounds kind of heartless, especially when you remember that these actions will have real impacts on millions of regular people around the world, but that's just their role. It's possible to recover from even very severe recessions. It's much harder to recover from hyperinflation. We are already seeing this play out. At a time like this, with all of the problems in the world, the Fed would never consider raising interest rates, but because of inflation, they are doing it anyway. The response of the government is going to be a bit different though, because unlike the Fed, they don't have a narrow mandate, and instead they exist for the good of the people they represent. The White House has already announced that inflation has become its top economic priority, and that it will not interfere.
Top priorities, the people that represent. Get the fuck out of here. Get the fuck out of here. Who the fuck is that guy? Who the fuck is that guy? Get out of here. Talking about somewhere their top priority. Man, these nuts are their top priority, homie. Fuck out of here, bro. I'm about to drag these nuts all across fucking Byron. Shouts out Byron, though. Fuck for Byron. Kinda. Don't really fuck with any president, to be fair with you. I'm not gonna hold you. But you motherfuckers don't have my interest. Okay. That's just insult to injury.
Here with the Federal Reserve's efforts to cool inflation, even though it acknowledges that it could put a damper on the economy's recovery. Instead, the government is trying to roll out new stimulus measures to alleviate the effects of both inflation and the potential recession. But hang on, isn't huge government stimulus efforts half of the reason that we have the inflation problem to begin with? Well, yes, it is. But the difference with these new stimulus measures is that they are designed to increase the supply of goods and services in the economy rather than just the demand for goods and services. If you give a person a $1,400 check, that doesn't necessarily add value to the economy. Sure, they can go out and spend it to keep businesses going, but if you do this enough, you're just going to have an inflation problem. Instead, this new stimulus proposal is targeted at building out infrastructure, releasing oil reserves, and building more housing, all of which will increase the supply of goods and services in the economy, which should hopefully both taper rising prices, but also provide a certain level of economic stimulus at the same time. Unfortunately, we are stuck between a recession and inflation. The question is now, how bad is it going to be? I like to end things on a positive note, so the answer is that it might not actually be as bad as we have been led to believe. Doom and gloom articles get clicks,
Okay, give me some
and
positivity.
as a person whose livelihood
please. I think I need this, to be honest with you. I think I might need a little bit of positivity in here. Just lie to me, please. I think I want to be lied to at this point. I want you to just straight up bullshit me, because it might just be what I need. It might just be the thing that keeps me going, that keeps me hanging on.
Depends on how many people I can get to watch my videos. I know that as a person, as we have been led to believe. Doom and gloom articles get clicks, and as a person whose livelihood depends on how many people I can get to watch my videos, I know that bad news sells a lot better than good news. But
Yes.
I am personally not nearly as worried as I was 6 months ago. Reserve banks have acknowledged the inflation problem, and while they have waited a bit too long, they are now taking decisive steps to alleviate the issue. Employment is still strong, which means that at least people still have incomes. Yes, the stock market is having a very bad year.
But that's just the unemployment charts that we learned. This is just the ones that the government's releasing. They're not accounting for a lot of people in this unemployment rate shit, by the way. They're not accounting for
people
a lot
still
of
have
people.
incomes. Yes, the stock market is having a very bad year, but that might be a blessing in disguise. Most of the value lost in the headline indexes has come from tech companies that were arguably wildly overvalued. A low interest rate environment meant that people could gamble on what companies would change the world in the decades to come, rather than investing in good old-fashioned businesses that were producing value now. The fall in the value of these tech companies is most of what has pulled the value of the total stock market down. Many of the biggest, more traditional companies in the world are actually having a great year. The same decline is likely to be seen in house prices as well, because these two asset classes are pretty strongly correlated.
That only goes
but
to
again,
2016.
that's not
What the
house
fuck
prices in the
kind of chart
world
is
are actually having a great year. The same decline is likely to be seen in house prices as well, because these two asset classes are pretty strongly correlated. But again, that's not necessarily a bad thing for the broader economy. The biggest economic downturns in history more or less came as a complete shock. 1929, 1937, 2001, and of course 2008. This is not an excuse to get complacent, but the fact that we have been seeing this coming for years now means that we are less likely to be blindsided by the impacts of either inflation or a severe recession. This episode of Economics Explained was brought to you by Public.com.
Okay, so looks like we might be prepared. It might not be as bad, he says. Look, it might not be as bad. It might not be as horrible as maybe you thought it was going to be. Maybe it's going to be fine. Maybe it's going to be fine. Maybe we'll be all right. Maybe we will get through this. I shouldn't say maybe. You know, we always do, right? We're strong people. We overcome. You know, what's the word for it? We overcome. We preserve. No, not preserve. What's the word for when you hang on a lot? You know what I'm talking about, man. That was that. The economy. We are in a middle of an inflation, hyperinflation, whatever, and in the middle of a recession at the same time, which makes for a very precarious position. It makes for a very, very tough situation, which is going to be sort of interesting in a weird way, just to see how that's going to play out, right? Just to see how that's going to go. We're going to be around to see it, right? Hopefully we're going to be around to see it, and hopefully what we do see is something that's not so shit, right? Hopefully it's not so shite. Hopefully we can come out of it. Maybe we're going to be good. Maybe we're going to be all right. Okay, hopefully. Hopefully. PBS Spacetime shouts out. Why do you guys not pop up when I'm making more videos? I need more videos to watch. I'm going to watch this one next. More about money, but not economics. That's philosophy. Yes, sir. Let me know what you guys think. Let me know what you guys, if you made it to the end, leave a comment. I will pin it. I will like it. I will do all of that good stuff. Let me know what you guys want me to react to next. If you're the GOAT, if you're a GOAT and you made it to the end, shouts out to you. And I will see